Rojbash Party Nation, welcome back. This is Extra Kurdinary. If this is your first time here, my name is Huje, and this is a podcast where we explore culture, identity, history, and everyday life through a Kurdish lens. But really, it's a conversation for anyone who's ever wondered what it means to belong. Today, we're talking about something that has become a huge part of my life, and that is mixed marriages. I am Kurdish and my husband is American Portuguese. And while our relationship is filled with laughter, love, and a lot of cultural learning, it's also made me realize that for some people, who you marry becomes a statement about who you are. Today's episode isn't really about interracial or intercultural marriage per se. It's about identity. It's about belonging, and it's about whether love has the power to cross borders that politics and history often cannot. I am so glad you're here. This is the second episode of Extra Kurdinary. Now, when I married my husband, I wasn't trying to make a statement, even though Huje loves to create some controversy. I really wasn't. I wasn't trying to challenge traditions. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I simply fell in love with someone who happened to be not Kurdish. And to me, my marriage was just that, a marriage. It was personal. It was built on love, friendship, understanding, choosing each other every day. It wasn't until I started sharing more of my life online that I realized just because my Kurdish uncles and my army of Kurdish cousins is okay with my choice, that the entire Kurdish population is okay with my choice. Other Kurds may not be as open-minded as my family is, and that was a hard realization for me to make, really. When you marry someone, you marry their family. Have you guys heard that? It's a saying, people say that. I think that's true. But sometimes you also marry another culture. And my husband didn't just marry me. He married all of us. No joke. But he married Kurdish hospitality. He married a loud family. He married a people whose history most Americans never learn in school. He married stories of displacement, stories of resilience. He married our music, our tradition. He married our food. He married our language. He even married my traumas. Poor guy. And I married his culture too. Although his culture is a little more part of my culture because I am a diaspora Kurd. But I've learned the importance of time and commitment, for example. Like I've learned American traditions of don't be late. Kurds are late all the time. When you make a commitment to be somewhere at a certain time, make sure you do that. I've learned about baseball. I've laughed at misunderstandings that seem huge at the time, but are funny now in retrospect. So communication is not always clear within our marriage, and that is fine. Because we are learning all these things about each other and about our cultures. One of my favorite parts about being married in a mixed marriage is discovering all the little things that you assume were normal until someone else points out that they're not. For example, I rarely use a cutting board. It's just the Kurdish way to cut a cucumber holding the knife against your thumb and the vegetable to, cut the vegetable up. But to my husband, that's a serious hazard. Or I never, ever, ever measure anything when I'm cooking. It's an insult to my ancestors, quite frankly, if I ever measure anything. But to my husband, it's wild that I don't measure anything. How can I recreate a dish if I'm not measuring the ingredients and stuff? So we debate about stuff like that. We discuss it, we argue, we laugh about it. And it's in the moments like that that I'm reminded that normal depends entirely on where you grew up and how you grew up. And normal can mean different things for all of us. Doesn't even necessarily have to be us from different cultures. Me and another Kurd could have these differences, right? And honestly, this episode wasn't even on my content calendar. It came up from something that happened a few months ago on my social media. My Instagram suddenly got picked up by the algorithm gods. I don't know if it's me putting content out there in the masses. I don't know if I'm using the right kind of hashtags or whatever it is. Algorithm gods are picking it up. For the first time, my content has reached thousands of Kurds that I've never met. Now, before getting married, I would have never wanted to get all this attention. It scared me to be seen by so many Kurds. I guess I was scared of judgment. But I was also much younger and a lot more insecure than I am now. Right now, other people's opinions just go past me, right? Or fuel me to create even more controversy. Whereas back then, like, it really scared me. But anyhow, after my Instagram started picking up some traction, most of the response to my content was incredibly positive. I have to say, I found my crowd. I love you guys. People are so supportive. They're encouraging. I found my people. I found my tribe. I found my party nation. I call them the Neo-Kurds. It's a new generation of Kurds. They don't necessarily have to have grown up in the diaspora, but they have this open mindset to this world. They love Kurdish tradition, but they also love a rave, you know. But there was this other side to the attention that I got. Some of my audience, Kurdish men to be specific, became deeply offended. Not because of anything that I said, but because I'm simply married to an American. They tell me things like I'm not really Kurdish because I'm married to a foreigner. That if I was truly Kurdish and I cared about my Kurdish identity, I would have married a Kurdish man. And some of these people even said that my future Kurdish American children are not really Kurdish. Now, for anyone who knows me knows that I take everything extremely personal. But I realized that in this conversation, it wasn't really about me. What if this whole conversation has nothing to do with mixed marriages either? And instead, it has everything to do with, drumroll, patriarchy. This hate that was coming my way was a perfect example of how my choice as a woman was turned into a symbol of national honor. As if a woman's marriage determines the worth of an entire people. Over 40 million to be precise. That's absurd. That is crazy beans. Ironically, one thing I've noticed in these conversations online, and I'm curious on whether or not you guys have noticed this too, it's that the reactions aren't always the same depending on who's marrying whom. When a Kurdish man marries a non-Kurdish woman, people often celebrate it. You'll hear comments like, oh, she's one of us, bukamaya, heart emojis, Kurdistan flag emojis, we want more Kurdish content, please do more Kurdish, please mention Kurdistan more. But when a Kurdish woman marries outside the community, the conversation can become very, very different, my friends. Suddenly, questions about identity, loyalty, and the future of an entire nation are in the picture. Why is that? Why do we often place the responsibility for preserving culture more heavily on women than on men? Why do we do that? Now, for many stateless or historically marginalized people, which, like the Kurds, there's a deep fear of losing language, of losing traditions, and of losing identity. And those concerns are understandable. But I wonder why those fears are so often expressed through expectations that are placed on women rather than shared equally by everyone. When I read comments telling me that I'm not Kurdish because of who I married, I can't help but think about Kurdish men I know who are married outside of the culture, including my own male cousins, some of my own male cousins. And they were met with congratulations instead of condemnation. If our identity as Kurds is strong enough to survive centuries of prosecution, displacement, and attempts of erasure, is it really so fragile that it depends on who a Kurdish woman marries and who a Kurdish woman loves? Or should we be asking a different question? Maybe the future of Kurdish identity isn't determined by who we marry. Maybe it's determined by what we choose to teach, how we choose to celebrate, how we choose to protect, and what we choose to pass on as Kurds to the next generation. Now, I don't have children, but I have a nephew on the way. And best believe this nephew is going to know about Kurds. Now, who actually gets to decide what makes someone Kurdish? I mean, is Kurdish identity really so fragile that it disappears the moment a woman falls in love with someone from another culture? Like, I definitely don't believe that. I reject any and all kind of patriarchy. And as I'm getting older, I'm starting to pick up on the systemic patriarchy a lot more. And I refuse to believe that preserving Kurdish identity requires policing Kurdish women's lives or deciding who they are allowed to love, or worse, shaming them for the choices that they have made. That's not very Kurdish of you if you do that. Kurds are a very, very welcoming and open people. At that point, you are no better than the online trolls and enemies of Kurds who are restricting our freedoms. I believe that our beautiful Kurdish culture survives because we teach it, because we are intentional about it. We pass it on with intention, not through fear. My language is still Kurdish. My childhood memories are still Kurdish. My family's history is still Kurdish. The values I grew up with are still Kurdish. The stories I tell are still Kurdish. And the reason why I started Extra Kurdinary, the podcast, was because I wanted more people, not fewer, to know who the Kurds are. If anything, marrying someone from another culture has made me even more intentional about sharing my Kurdish identity. One thing marriage has taught me is that love doesn't require you to be the same. My husband is an accountant. And let me explain. My husband is an accountant. He is a numbers and logics guy. I'm a dreamer with a messy mind and a heart of an artist. Our mixed marriage demands that we stay curious, that we continue to ask questions, even the difficult ones, that we listen to each other more intently, that we admit when our way isn't the only way. And every relationship is really a meeting of two worlds. Sometimes those worlds come from different countries. Sometimes they may come from different neighborhoods. Sometimes they come from different economic backgrounds or educational backgrounds. The important thing, though, is choosing each other again and again and again while respecting each other's backgrounds. Before we end today's episode, guys, I wanted to leave you with one thought. Mixed marriages aren't about losing your identity. I will continue to do the following two things. One, continue to live my life for me, not for you guys, and I hope you do the same. And two, keep telling myself that other people's opinions don't pay my bills. And in the words of Mel Robbins, just let them. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear your story. Are you in a mixed marriage? Have you experienced hate from strangers for your choice in partner? Have you ever had to defend your identity? Or have you fallen in love with someone whose world looked completely different from your own? Leave a comment, send me a message, or share this episode with someone who needs to hear this. And if you're enjoying Extra Kurdinary, please follow the show on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and keep an eye out for the Apple podcast soon. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and stay extra Kurdinary.